Hi all, this is Serotonin and you are listening to the Serotonen Receptor. It is 2:22, oh my goodness, on the 8th of April, I'm sorry, not Saturday, 2019. So this week's theme is anger, and we're going to start it out with Ian and Billy and the boys. I hope you enjoy. If you don't like loud music, turn it down a little bit right now. You got the world upon your back and still you rise. And it's pretty powerful stuff. You are not chained to the wheel. I will add the lyrics actually in the description box today because I find it really profound. And totally going off on a tangent, which is totally like me. But yeah, this was an album I discovered through a relative, and it's an incredibly insightful album. And what was really interesting is the band was actually on hiatus for 7 years before that. They released this album It was like top of the charts. It was doing so well, and within 3 months, Atlantic Records pulled it, and they went into hiatus again for another 7 years. They've always been working. They've always made a ton, like they never made a ton of money, I should say. Well, they did, in the 80s and 90s. But yeah, very interesting stuff. I see some interesting stuff going on there. But anyway, very insightful album, incredibly insightful album. Very insightful lyrics, and it is a beautiful sort of beginning or introduction to our theme today of anger and what to do with it. Now, first, I wanted to talk a little bit about the tangential thinking and just sort of me in general about being sort of a tangential person. I like to joke that, I live in the rabbit hole, but I am a rabbit and I act like a rabbit. And I tend to hop around a little bit, which I'm sure you guys have noticed. For anyone who has been sort of interested in my videos for a certain period of time, they'll have seen how different my content is. It's all over the place. I feel like I've said this already, but I just wanted to reiterate that I'm very compelled to present what I see in the truth of my perception. And again, this is always my perception of things. This is my opinion. I want to be of service to others, and this is why I'm, making videos and doing a podcast. It's just, if we don't all rise together, then, certain people standing alone is not, can be a little terrifying. The importance of working with the team, bringing as many of us along with us as we can. However, I also want to reiterate, because I don't want anyone to stress this, myself included, that we are not responsible for awakening everyone around us. We can do our best, and those that are there to listen are there to listen, and hopefully little by little the numbers will increase. But please don't take it upon yourself to awaken people. I'm getting a lot of emails from people about feeling increasingly isolated and wanting to find out ways to meet up with others. This was the one email that I got for this week's podcast. And I just want to say that, okay, so definitely there is on MeWe, there is a group with the Thomas Williams the People's Club that Thomas Williams hosts, and they are incredibly awakened people. They are ready to help. It seems like some of them are really great at being supportive. I'm just terrible at social media. It's just another rabbit hole for me to fall into, so I kind of steer clear of it. But I highly recommend that for anyone who is feeling very isolated in their community, finding online support, number one, is a huge relief to yourself. You might be feeling desperate and lonely. Excuse me. I know a lot of people that are alone. That are awake, have been awake for a long time. And so their isolation has been quite, extended to a certain degree. But as we are tuned into this news, I'm always shocked. Like, I'm so shocked what people don't know about what's happening. Like, I'd be reading stuff about Hillary Clinton like last year this time. And I was in an art course for adults this time last year, and nobody in my class knew anything. They all thought she was just, had been hard done by the bad orange man, It's just like, anyway. So it is very isolating. And I would say, I would definitely encourage for all of us to have, personal relationships where we actually are physically present with the people that we're, spending time with and whatnot. But I do think that, even especially for those of us that are living in smaller communities, I'm not, but I still, I live in a big city, but that said, it's not that easy meeting people. It does feel like you're kind of socially, you're in a small community nonetheless. So that said, I think the best thing to do, the first thing to do is triage, right? When you're not doing well, the first thing to do is triage. And for those of us that don't know what triage is, myself, not maybe like not that long ago, I don't know, 5 years ago, I found out what it was. It's basically just like dealing with the initial harm. Okay, so triage is usually set up in like a battlefield or, in first aid tent somewhere, and it's just dealing with the immediate wound. So that said, go online and find yourself a good supportive community. I've been listening to the Thomas Williams show for about a year and a half, and I know I talk a lot about him, but it's part of the reason I'm doing this podcast. I'm feeling very inspired by that. Like, I've always kind of done a little bit of an odd perspective. Like, I've done businesses where I'm not making any money for an extended period of time, and that's okay with me. Um, and that kind of thing. And it's not because I don't know how to run a business, it's because of the nature of my business and what my intention is for the community. Um, but that said, I've been listening to him for a long time. I do think he has a lot of good people that are supporting him and are around him. I've been privy to a lot of the commentary on his podcast, and I do know that there are some names that have been mentioned more than once of people who have been very supportive to people who are looking for help. So if you are in that kind of situation, I would definitely check out that group on MeWe, the People's Club. .org is the name of the group, and I think if you look for Thomas Williams Truth, Honor, and Integrity or the People's Club on MeWe, and MeWe.com is basically like an alternative to Facebook. And they do have a Facebook page as well, so you can do that, but I don't know how people feel about Facebook these days, so as you like. But again, if you're on Facebook, look for Thomas Williams Truth, Honor, and Integrity show, or thepeoplesclub.org would probably be the smarter choice out of those two. Both are his organizations or whatever, but the People's Club, I think, consists more interactively with the group, the members, whereas I think the Truth, Honor, and Integrity show would just be like comments about his podcast. So you can check those out. And yeah, and so I hope that helps. And my sort of intention for that, my belief around this is that once you have a chance to talk to people online about your feelings around like what's going on and what you're awake to, and being able to discuss things and have build dialogue with people that are just purely out of interest, or if you're seeking actual help, if you're feeling like a little bit, overwhelmed and stuff like that, then they're a good interactive group to stay in touch with. And they would be a great part of your support network. And I would still encourage you to continue having friendships with people that are not awake, um, because it's those friendships and those relationships, I'm sure, are still rich in their own degree. Um, and if they're not, I mean, if they're not enriching to you, then don't have them, is my one sort of option out of that, or one sort of addendum to that. But I do think that you should definitely consider having relationships with friends that, continuing those as best you can. So these are people who can support you in other ways. So it's a good idea. Excuse me. The other thing is that as time goes on, um, they're gonna become awakened to some realities as well, and perhaps then the isolation will, between the two parties in that sense will become either more apparent and then fade away, or, they might start turning to you for help. You never know. Okay. Okay, so let's get into tonight's theme. And the theme is anger. And I believe that a lot of us are going to be feeling a lot of anger these days, especially due to that isolation just mentioned. And also because of the ascension process. And so, okay, so just very quickly, so that we're all on the same page. When I'm talking about ascension, what I'm referring to is a concept that people are talking about whereby our planet is alive as a sentient being. Mother Earth, Gaia, Temet, Midgard, lots of different names are given to it. And so we are in unison with the planet and all of the living beings on the planet, including plant life and minerals and everything. We are undergoing an ascension, basically a dramatic, genetic sort of shift. And we're being, I believe the idea is that we're being put into a different part of the universe, where we have traveled to a different part of the universe. We're receiving different light is coming, is emitting itself towards the earth, and we're absorbing this new light. And the Schumann resonance is like off the charts, and there's all kinds of quakes and weather changes, although I believe quite a bit of that is due to weather manipulation. But there's interesting objects in the sky. You can check out Mr. MMBBB. I'm also going to write down, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to be making notes while we're doing this. But he's got some really great footage of really interesting stuff coming into view in our sky. Sort of planet spherical looking objects, and I'm seeing what I believe to be a pretty shifty looking sun these days. I don't know about you guys, but anyway. So yes, so the ascension process basically is throwing us all off kilter. It's changing us in a very fundamental level. In an emotional sense, we are basically being kind of stripped down to our core, and it's a really good time to be shedding a lot of the baggage that we have. If you imagine that ascension is like a trip, and think about your life and all the baggage that you may have collected over the course of your life, and it can be quite a lot. Each incident that creates an emotional imprint of stress on our psychophysiological being, so in our mind. And because of that, because something makes an impression on us, it affects us in a physical way. We kind of store it. So it's like, extra sugar or fat, the body stores it, right? And so essentially what is happening is we are creating an item and packing our bags with these items. And the more items that we hang on to, the more bags we have. And I don't believe that we're allowed to take anything on this particular trip. So I would suggest that we shed as much baggage as possible, which is not easy. And anger is one of the most debilitating and just absolutely destructive traits out there. And it's becoming more and more difficult for people to control their anger. So we're going to address some ways and some possible reasons for anger. Now, these are all my opinions. But as a psychotherapist that worked for 12 years, the things that I observed in myself, the friends around me, because you kind of, I think most people who go into this kind of work, we all analyze everyone else around us. Like, it's really hard not to. You're kind of always kind of analyzing people, and even if you don't mean to. Um, but I would say that most children of single parents have anger issues. And what I would, sort of, okay, I define anger issues as both people pleasing and an inability to get angry, as well as rages and outbursts. So people pleasing and suppression, as well as rages and outbursts, to me is all part of anger mismanagement. And um, to defend my view on this, I believe that this is why the reason it happens is because single parents have nobody else to take over um, the situation. And if they're making good money, they might be worrying about how their kids are doing and how much free time they have. And there's always a level of stress that comes with worrying about your kids because you don't have someone else to take care of them. And I'm extremely lucky that I don't know that firsthand, but I have someone very close to me who is a single mom, and this is what I've observed. For more timid people, their inability to get angry usually results in unwanted crying. And so, if that person is uncomfortable crying in a situation, they're not going to get angry. Because for whatever reason, it's like they're hardwired to end up crying without being able to properly, with confidence, access their feelings of anger and talk about them appropriately to the person who needs to hear their voice, their angry voice, the person they're standing up to. So yeah, there's a lot of sort of definitions around anger problems and misdirected anger. Um, and I just wanted to mention too that as along with single parenthood, I mean, I think really just any difficult family situation results in children being unable to direct their anger in an appropriate way. And of course, rages and outbursts have incredibly immediately destructive properties. But I would say probably to a certain degree, I mean, it depends how bad the outbursts are. Rages are never healthy. A rage is generally the result of a very long standing, deep seated discomfort. And that can happen with people who are people pleasers and suppress their anger. It is not um, it's not a guarantee. It's never a guarantee. Nothing is ever a guarantee. Everybody is completely different and everybody responds to things differently and everybody has different levels of responsibility to the community or feel they have different levels of responsibility to the community. So I think that you know, rages are usually a result of suppressed anger. Outbursts can be incredibly destructive, and especially if they're, sort of hinged and unanchored. So I would venture to say that all types of mismanaged anger are destructive. Now, what I would consider to be healthy anger is, to for it to be a functional thing where the anger is motivational, but you're not actually yelling. Um, I'm actually, oh, this is very interesting. So I mentioned in a couple of podcasts ago a book called Never in Anger, which was about parenting. It was about an Inuit community that welcomed in an anthropologist in the 70s who ended up writing this book called Never in Anger. And I actually ended up finding it. So I'm going to begin reading this book, and I will get back in touch. Well, I will get back to you guys with what my findings are about this particular subject, with this community, because I find it very fascinating. There's always this school of thought, in therapeutic communities, that anger was healthy. And however, I've objected to many different schools of thought in the therapeutic communities. So, it's why I no longer work as a therapist. So yeah, basically there's that. Um, so what I would constitute as healthy anger, like I said, is a motivational thing. It's more like you feel angry, so you're going to do something about it. But you don't act outwardly in an angry way. So your feelings of anger are absolutely healthy, but to shout at people and freak out at people is not. Um, it's not healthy, and that sucks because we're all human, and that's what we all do, myself included. So, I'm not trying to sound holier than thou. We need to, but we do need to kind of deal with our angry um, sides, because at this point, um, there's a lot of tension being pushed. So I talked about ascension being part of the reason there's a lot of tension, but that's just one small piece of it. There's also the political agenda. There's what like the left, the who. Okay, I really don't like this sort of political thing, but the angry community in the US, the people that are not happy with what is going on, mostly the media is driving them with this narrative. And so what we're seeing the what probably would have happened, should the result of things have, I don't know, I don't even know what to say about this whole thing. I'm starting to just kind of want to just not get really into the whole trying to figure out the whole politics of everything. But I suppose we can all agree that things are a mess and they're really stirring the pot. Like every day, there's more articles about baiting one side or the other of some hot button issue. So, this is why we want to deal with our anger, because when unchecked anger just sits there, the smallest little thing can blow us right off course. I remember famously there was some book this woman had written about her divorce, and the whole premise of the book was that, what had prompted the divorce was that one of them had dropped an olive on the floor. And that began the discussion. That began the fight. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. That began the discussion for their request to divorce. So that said, be careful when you are walking around with all of your baggage, which is our hurt items, the things that weigh us down, that have hurt us. Um, During these times, they're really, and it's not just you who's getting angry; it's other people, and people might be baiting you. And again, referring back to this book, Never in Anger, she talks about one point in the book, she talks about this custom of when you're dealing with kids and trying to teach them about themselves and controlling their emotions, you kind of bait them a little bit. Like, in the case of the 2-year-old throwing the stones, she was like, she sees this little child throwing stones at her mother, and so the mom says, throw another one, and then when the child does, she goes, ow, and throw me another one. And the idea is, oh, and then she says, she really, exaggerates the pain that she feels, and then asks questions like, oh, well, you don't like me? And the child would probably likely to say no, because that's their parent, or someone they care about. And then the next question is usually, well, does that mean you're a baby? And of course, most small children do not want to be a baby. They want to be, a big kid. So over time, the child will start to associate this action with being childish or hating this person, and realize that you don't throw stones. And it's better than, screaming at your kid, don't throw stones at me. So there's just this very interesting aspect of no anger. And of course, the other piece that's going on in that is the mother is saying, throw the stone, throw the stone. And eventually the child will not throw the stone once they're asked, if it happens again, which it might not. But the idea is that you sort of bait them a little bit. And over time, the child will learn not to rise to people baiting them, which I think is just brilliant. I mean, this approach to parenting, it's just fantastic. It's like threefold. So I will get back to you on. Okay, so we're going to go straight to worksheet 8.2 in the Mind Over Mood book. And we're going to go over the thought record, which is the big, very interesting document that I want to share with you all. So as we're unpacking our baggage, things like these little supportive books, supportive sheets especially, are very, very helpful. And I really want to recommend that you all have a look and download this PDF that I've linked for you all, because it's super helpful and really great workbook. And this worksheet in specific, you can just photocopy and put it in your pocket, your purse, your wallet, your bag, wherever. Take it with you, have it on you at all times. So the thought record is comprised of 7 different categories. So there's situation, moods, automatic thoughts, evidence that supports the hot thought, and evidence that does not support the hot thought, the alternative and balanced thoughts, and then you will finally going to rate the moods now. So I'm going to go over this super quick, and we're going to have a quick, so what we'll say the situation was, you and your boss got mad over, say you over ordered something, and it was an accident, and your boss freaked out on you, and you freaked out really hardcore at your boss, and now you're worried. So that'll be our situation. And so who are you with? Okay, so you're going to talk about in your situation who you were with, what you were doing, when was it, and when were you? And also take into consideration, please, if you were hungry, tired, or physically uncomfortable or in pain, because those do affect our moods greatly. So in column number 2, you're going to rate your moods. And I'm going to also attach an emotional vocabulary list, which is basically just sort of like a moods chart for people who would like that extra bit of support for that. It's asking you to rate the intensity of each mood. So you're going to break it down and you're going to write as many different moods as you are feeling in that moment. So you might feel, guilt and shame, anger, you might feel sadness, some disappointment, some melancholy. There's a lot of different things that happen when you're angry. So it's not anger. It's just it's a huge mixed bag. Anger is like a bag. There's not one item in there. And you're going to rate each separate mood, and as many as you can identify that in that mood. In that situation. And each mood will be rated out of 0 to 100%. Okay, and so the total of your moods might, come up to, I don't know, 850 or something. So it's not the total at 100%, it's each mood. And then you're going to circle or mark the mood that you really want to investigate, the one that seems the most compelling. Okay, so then in automatic thoughts or images, those are also called the hot thoughts. So if you hear of that reference, that's automatic thoughts and images, or hot thoughts is what we're talking about. And you're going to answer the first 2 general questions, and then some or all of the questions specific to the mood that you marked in column 2. So what was going through my mind just before I started to feel this way, and what images or memories do I have in this situation? If you marked your mood as having depression, you might want to ask yourself, what does this mean about me, my life, my future? If you marked that you are feeling anxiety, you might want to answer, what am I afraid might happen, or what is the worst that could happen? If you are marked anger or shame, you might want to read, what does this mean about how the other people or person is thinking or feeling about me? And what does it mean about the other person or people in general? You might want to answer too, did I break the rules, hurt others, or not do something I should have done? What do I think about myself because I did this or believe that I did? And that's usually if you have marked yourself for guilt or shame. Those are helpful questions for that. So then in column 4, you're going to give evidence that supports the hot thought. So say your automatic thought is, I yelled at my boss, so they're going to fire me. So give evidence that supports the hot thought. Did your boss say, for example, and this has to be factual evidence, by the way. This is not, you can't say, well, my boss is going to fire me because I'm a big jerk, or I yelled. Or I yelled in my boss's face might be a perfectly good reason why a boss might want to fire someone. So think more factually. Did your boss say anything like you better watch yourself or something like that? Did someone else say that they heard something that seemed pretty concrete? So that's the evidence that you want to give for supporting that hot thought. So actual, factual evidence. Then evidence that does not support the hot thought would be something like, well, my boss didn't say they were going to fire me, or my boss has, I've seen someone else yell at my boss before and they didn't get fired, or what I was upset about, was legitimate, and I had, reasonable, I explained myself well, because I just want to mention too, in this particular situation, we were talking about anger mismanagement and anger issues, but sometimes as angry people, we get angry and then we feel bad for being angry. And that's another type of anger mismanagement, is to get appropriately angry and then feel like the worst person in the world after that. So there's a lot of very complicated anger mismanagement and just badly dealt with anger. Anger is a huge topic. Okay, so then I'm column 6 and then column 7. So column 6 is alternative and balanced thoughts. So you're going to sort of say to yourself, for example, you know what? I was a jerk and I did yell at my boss, but other people have yelled at them and not gotten upset and not gotten fired. So maybe I should go in and try and smooth the waters. Or, maybe I wasn't so rough, but maybe they don't deserve that. Or, maybe I'm tired of that place, and maybe this is an indication of me needing some time off. Or, maybe I need more me time. Maybe I need to just, spend more time looking after number one. There's all kinds of different ways to balance that. You could also, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna leave that there. I'm not gonna try and overdo this. Okay, and then when you get to column 7, you're gonna rate your moods. The same moods from column 2, and you're gonna decide at this point, after you filled out the whole sheet, what percentage are you feeling for each mood, and some of them might be 0%. So, okay, so that is that in terms of the Mind Over Mood worksheets. And you know what? This has been a super difficult podcast to get done. So I'm thinking of wrapping it up right about now. I'm just going to have a quick look at the one last thing I wanted to go over with you guys is a program, a group called ACA, and I've mentioned this before. The acronym stands for the Adult Children of Alcoholics, And it is similar to a 12-step program, but it has no ways associated with any of the AA uh, chapters, or any of the anonymous chapters. Um, and it is an incredibly insightful way of looking at your childhood. So many of us that are dealing with anger issues were brought up in a slightly traumatic or extremely traumatic or middle of the road traumatic homes. And often, there was some kind of cover up. This is one of the big things that they talk about, is the secrecy that some people have in their families about things, and covering up their their foibles or what have you with their kids. And so, for example, the alcoholic father or mother, that nobody ever talks about the drinking. They come home and they cause a big mess, and they freak out or whatever, and then the next day everybody pretends that it never happened. And so that kind of thing. Or sometimes I've had clients in the past whose parents were not addicts of any type, but they totally fit their family structure, and what occurred definitely fit under the same sort of um, effects of that kind of an addiction. So just the sort of, there's also withholding of love, for parents withholding their love for their children, or unstable moods, and you're never allowed to ask or talk or point things out or that kind of thing. So there's a lot of that that's very prevalent in all kinds of dysfunctional uh, grown-ups that are coming from dysfunctional families. So I really want to recommend that any of you are somewhat interested in this, to come and check out the website. I'll put a link below. It's just adultchildren.org, and they have chapters all over the world if you want to do meetings. But I would say their biggest treasure is actually their book, which you can purchase, I believe, online, or you can find them in stores. And I've actually found them in secondhand stores like thrift shops all over the place. And it's called Adult Children of Alcoholics. So very interesting philosophy, and very compelling, and extremely unique, I would say, program. They really don't look at you fixing yourself the way 12-step programs do. They work on you coming to terms with the way your childhood was, and forgiving your parents and moving on. And it is one of the most healthy, psychologically healthy programs I've ever heard of. So I definitely recommend that if anyone's struggling with their childhood, you check out Adult Children of Alcoholics. Okay, everyone, I have been talking for way too long. This has been going on and on. I've been having so many technical difficulties, so this has taken far too long to do. And it is my bedtime. And we are boldly moving forward as a global community, as our little pockets of community, our little areas, the things that we care about, the things that make us different and beautiful. Everything is just crystallizing and becoming where it needs to become, and human cymatics. And, it's really important to um, step back out of your raw emotions of anger right now, and really take into account how amazing we all are, and that the time of man is now. This is our time, and it's going to unfold the way it's going to unfold. Que sera sera. And it's a beautiful, um, incredible time to be alive. Like, it's just so incredibly dynamic. It's unbelievable. And yeah, we're really going somewhere together that's just pushing ourselves to the max. So don't be surprised if you are feeling stressed out, if you are feeling that anger, if you are feeling that frustration, if you're letting it all kind of hang out and, just that discomfort. And I would say bring it to the surface and let it go. Bring it to the surface and let it go each time, each time. But easier said than done. So hopefully over time, working on yourself, I'm still trying to figure out a way to put the Reiki level 1 online so people can do like a Patreon donation and then download the Reiki level 1 information. That would be sort of the give back. So that would be like the one thing you can purchase off of me if you want. You can do a straight up donation, I guess, if you want. But yeah, so I'm going to keep working on that because I definitely think that Reiki is going to help all of us work out our anger. And hopefully you have found this helpful and interesting. And yeah, just keep working on yourself, keep letting go, keep giving in and giving over, It's it's a process. And you're unearthing yourself from the mire as we go forward. So be gentle on yourself and have a wonderful night and God bless. And I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Tell